Walking outside at night is an interesting feeling. It's a feeling of both calmness, stillness, and of not belonging. But it always feels in some sort of ways a bit unnatural, but also incredibly liberating. Call of the Night is a series based around that feeling, based around the different kinds of ways you can discover yourself by changing the time of day you go outside, or the time of day that you evaluate your life. This is a series that, to me, as a perpetual night owl, really spoke to me and my desire to be up at night or to go outside at night. There's something just very different about it, which is a trait I share with the main character of this series, Ko Yamori. Ko is a 14-year-old boy who struggles to fit in. Not that he can't converse easily with people, not that he's not good at school. He just doesn't feel like he belongs and has gotten to a point in his life where he just doesn't care to. He's just given up on wanting to be involved with people. He doesn't understand love, he doesn't understand romance, he doesn't understand a lot of things that people his age seem to be obsessed with. He just doesn't feel like he fits into the world that he's in. And it's with this disillusionment that leads him to going out at night, to seeing what the world is like in the night, wanting to explore parts of himself that he doesn't understand because he is 14 years old. He's going through puberty. He's just learning what it is to be a person, you know, going through those first stages of developing who you are. And it's on this first trip into the unknown that he runs into Nazuna Nunakasa, who is a vampire. Well, that's not immediately apparent to Ko when they first meet up. To Ko, she's just some weird person who likes going out at night, who enjoys just the liberating feeling of being around a city in nighttime. She takes Ko under her wing, trying to show him the beauty of the nightlife, of enjoying yourself and recognizing that he has something in his life that he's not fulfilling. That's why he's up at night. After this, Nazuna invites him over to her house so they can take a nap together. You know, hang out, get in bed. Normal things that you would ask a 14-year-old to do, I guess. I don't know. We'll touch on that in a moment. But they're here in Nazuna's bed, and Ko tries to pretend that he's asleep just so he can get through this as fast as he can, even though he's not tired at all. And when Nazuna thinks he's asleep, she leans in and bites his neck, revealing that she is a vampire. Like I said earlier, I already told you what she is. She's a vampire. Upon realizing that he's been bitten by a vampire, though, Ko realizes that he is frustrated that he is not himself turning into a vampire, because there's very certain specifications you need to meet in order to become a vampire. You see, in this world, in order to be a vampire, you have to fall in love with a vampire and then allow that person to bite you. It's here that Ko decides that he wants to become a vampire and that he will commit himself to falling in love with Nazuna, even though he doesn't, again, quite understand what love is or why people want it or anything outside of that other than his desire to become a vampire. And it's this struggle for Ko to understand what love is or how exactly he's supposed to feel it that dominates the majority of the series. Now, if you were listening to the past few minutes of this video, you may have a few questions like, so it's a 14-year-old boy? And how old is the vampire? Now, while that is a great question, we don't exactly know. It hasn't really been discussed that far in the series. But from what the series implies, it's reasonable to assume that she's at least from the 80s, so 40 at least. Maybe in the 50s, who knows exactly. She's a little older, and a 40 to 50-year-old vampire with a 14-year-old boy is what you may call a problematic age gap. I want to say that this doesn't actually affect my enjoyment of the series all that much. Normally in shows like this, age gaps would be very concerning, especially an age gap between a 14-year-old and a 40-year-old. In many situations, that's something you gotta take a moment there and be like, okay, what exactly is going on here? But the reason I don't get as weirded out about it when I talk about Call of the Night is for a couple reasons. The main one being that this is a pretty common trope of any kind of vampire story. In order to get a vampire story to really work, it's kind of what you need to do. Now, I have heard a lot of anime fans in defending this show saying, well, people didn't have a problem with Twilight, and Twilight was about a 16-year-old girl with an over 100-year-old vampire, and I can say definitively, I was alive during the Twilight times. People did call that out pretty frequently. Though this argument wasn't really coming from people who would say are arguing in good faith. Sure, they were making a coherent argument, but it wasn't one I think that they were making because they were concerned about the subject matter, more so that they just wanted to bash on Twilight, which, hey, that's not the most outrageous thing. I did that all the time when I was that age, but you know, something to point out there. That being said here, I do feel like that if they had aged the character up to 18, 19, then it wouldn't have really affected the story all that much. I get that the show is trying to portray the problems of adolescence and growing into yourself and trying to understand what it is in life, but I think that could be accomplished with someone who may have just graduated high school or who's about to enter college, or maybe is not entering college because they don't know what to do, or, you know, someone who's in that stage of their life. I think you could tell the same story in that way, and that would be a little less weird because they're a little more emotionally mature and not 14. If you feel that's weird, then you shouldn't watch this show. I understand, and I don't begrudge you in any kind of way. It doesn't really feel like the story is trying to put these two together, or at least it doesn't just leave the fact that he's 14 to just be out there and not acknowledge it. I've actually been surprised that in a few of the later episodes in the series, they do actually bring that up a bit. Like it does come up a couple times here, right? And that is a point that they talk about. Still some weird jokes in there. That's probably cultural differences, but also, you know, you could still read that as pretty creepy. So up to you how you feel about that. Again, I don't feel like the show is trying to really stick these characters together permanently romantically, but I can't say because, you know, the series isn't concluded at this time. We're only just through season 1. But I wanted to get this little discussion out of the way first because it is important to acknowledge that Ko is a 14-year-old boy and Nazuna is in her 40s, 50s, or something like that. Maybe older, could be 300, we don't even know. But again, it is a content warning. You should be aware that that's something that is present in this show, and if those kind of age gaps bother you, as they in many cases most understandably would, then be aware of them, they exist. One thing I really like is I love this artists, the mangakas. I love their art, I love their character designs, I love their faces, and I love the animation studio, Linden Films. I love how they bring this in and add all these shadows and different kinds of layers and coloring. There is a very tight stylization that I love. I absolutely love from this series. Its art direction and its storyboarding and overall animation is wonderful. It is not an action series, right? So there's not going to be a giant Sakuga big fight scene, right? You know. But since this is more of a slice of life supernatural romance type show, that's really not something you're going to need in this kind of series. What the series does excel at is still images or backgrounds that are glowingly beautiful. The way that this show captures the night is in a lot of ways impossible. There's no way you would get these kind of stars near any kind of city in the world. But the way that they do capture it captures the feeling of the night, captures the emotion of being out at night and seeing those kinds of stars or the night sky. You know, it captures the beauty in a way that feels real more than it actually is, which is the beauty of animation in and of itself and why I think it really excels as a medium. There's also a great use of a lot of shadows, a lot of darkness, which makes sense for a show that's mainly based in the night, but also having a lot of, you know, scenes that are set in very bright environments that also have a lot of color, a lot of pop to them, and don't feel washed out in any kind of way. Because I feel like a lot of shows, when they base themselves in the night, they kind of wash out the day, or they make the day feel very, I don't know, a bit sterile in ways, which this show doesn't do either. The director for this anime is Tomoyuki Itamura, which if you're familiar with the Monogatari series, he directed most of those past Bakemonogatari, which I have not personally seen. I've started watching Bakemonogatari actually pretty recently, but I haven't watched fully into the series that he himself directed. What I did see though was his previous directorial work, which was the case study of Vanitas, or Vanitas no Carte, which is an exceptional anime that I've already talked about. It's you can see it on my channel from last year. Very interesting that he's, both of his recent animes are about vampires and the night. Very different stylizations though, in a number of ways, which I think could be more the fact that they're two different tones. Vanitas is a more loud, energetic, and action-y series with a lot of beautiful moments, incredible animation, and just some immaculate work by Bones, the studio that animated that series, but also still having a lot of beautiful examples of the night, a lot of beautiful examples of just backgrounds and amazement going on there that elevate that series. But it is interesting to me that this director has done now 2 different vampire animes in back-to-back years. Both of them probably the best vampire anime I've seen in a long, long time, at least the ones that explore what being a vampire is in a more engaging way. Though the vampires in Vanitas are a bit different than most vampires, it again doesn't really matter. And this director does a really good job with fantasy worlds, I've noticed. Just having these fantastical elements and integrating them to make them feel common in a sort of way. And when I say common, I don't mean common in the way that it is mundane, but common in the way that it feels natural in this world, that it doesn't feel like it is jutting out of it in any kind of way that doesn't really make sense. They feel like they all flow together, right? You can understand how people like these vampires, you understand how people like Nazuna wander around the city and make their lives, and it feels fantastical, but yet at the same time pretty grounded. Now, I have to give a specific shout out to whoever decided to use the music in this show. The band Creepy Nuts does the ending theme, the opening theme, and some of the, in the actual show, there's some of their songs that play. Whoever chose this band, they deserve a raise. This is so fitting. They are a hip-hop band, hip-hop group. It's a 2-piece, but it's the first anime in a very long time where I have never at any point skipped the intro or the outro, ever. I've never done that. Even in my rewatches, I'm not skipping anything because I love the music. Like, I added these songs immediately to my playlist, both ending and opening, immediately threw them on a playlist in Spotify. They're that good. They are an exceptional band, and their music is really catchy and fits the mood of this anime perfectly. Whoever picked this band out to be in this anime, it is one of the most flawless choices that they could have made. So from an animation perspective, a music perspective, directorial perspective, they really knock it out of the park in all these different ways. The one thing that I think is a little lacking is the story at times, right? I think overall the characters are interesting and the themes it explores are deep. There's a lot about mental illness, about depression, about different kinds of dissatisfaction in life, and coming of age that it delves into in a more mature way. If you're someone who doesn't really enjoy slice of life stories, then this isn't really probably going to be a good fit for you. Because the show is, for the most part, pretty slice of life, pretty chill, pretty on an even path for most of it here. If you don't really get caught up in the stylization, if you aren't in love with the visuals or the music, then it may just not work for you as much. Because a lot of what pulls me into it is that stylization that they do. But I could see a number of people not really feeling this series, could not be for them, and that's okay. I think this is one of those shows that it was one of my favorites of the season. I think it deserves a lot of praise for doing what it does, but I can see a lot of people being a little off-put by, again, the age gap problem. Overall, Call the Night is a show that I recommend to most people. I think you should give it a try. You should see if it fits for you. This is one that I think definitely won't appeal to a wide audience at large. Could be pretty niche in a lot of ways, but I would recommend it, again, to people who enjoy slice of life, who enjoy something fantastical, vampires, the night, or just want some really good music and something to vibe with, because this is a very vibey show. I think that's probably the biggest thing I get from it is vibes. Anyway, I hope you like this video. If you want to see more anime reviews, be sure to subscribe and click the bell, because that'll tell you when more things are getting put out by me. I hope you have a great day, a great night, or whatever it is you're having, and stay rad. Okay, goodbye now.